Only 90s kids remember Camp Nowhere. We're going to give our nostalgic modern day review for today. Hello, please come in. There's some fresh cookies in the cookie jar. There's a pitcher of Kool-Aid on the counter. Have a seat. We'll put a movie on for you. This is Movies at Grandma's House, where we look at the movies from the past to see if they're good with our modernized today and Grandma approves. And I'm your host, Isaac. Please report to me immediately if you find a Taco Bell. And who's joining me to consider the 1994 film Camp Nowhere?
Ajax. The name's Flurm. Flurm with a PH.
And welcome one and all to Grandma's House. We have a special guest joining us this week. It's Ajax. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to consider this movie. This is a movie you picked. So I'm really interested to get your thoughts on this one because going back to this movie, it brought back some nostalgia. We'll get into it a little bit more. Seth sends his regards. He was not able to make it this week, but he wants to say he wishes he could have joined, so he will return soon. In the meantime, we got Ajax filling in. So we thank you for filling in for Seth this week. But like we like to do, we want to give you the proper spoiler warning. Even though this movie came back in 1994, consider yourself warned. We're going to be going into this movie in depth. So here on out, it is spoiler territory. And if you like nostalgic movies, you want to relive those memories, smash that subscribe button below if you don't mind. We appreciate you so much, and we want to hear from you, your thoughts, your memories as well. So, as we mentioned, we are considering the movie Camp Nowhere. This came out on August 26th, 1994. Now, what's interesting is I looked up, and I could not find a budget for this movie anywhere. And you can chime in if you found it, Ajax, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
I didn't see a budget. I just saw how much they made.
That's all I could find. It made $10 million at the box office. And by those considerations, they said it didn't do very well. So I'm going to guess the budget was in the tens of millions, somewhere in there, but was considered a flop. We'll get into more of how it's considered today. Reviews, I did kind of glance and see it was a 6.1 on IMDb, 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I find this funny. There's a site called Common Sense. It was rated a 1 out of 5 for Common Sense. So take that as you will. Like, what do you think? Is that like your common sense radar or something?
Well, it is corny. It is cheesy. It is campy. It has camp in the title. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of sense to it. So I would agree with that. But it doesn't lack in fun and nostalgia. It's got a lot of fun and a lot of kind of heart-ish. So, yeah. Yeah,
we'll get into that more too because there's kind of that mixed reviews, as you can see. You know, some sites give it a positive, some give it a negative. Again, I thought that was interesting. Rotten Tomatoes was around that 17%. But with that being said, this was released back in 1994. I'm interested, what are some of your first memories with this film?
So I actually remember seeing it in the theater. I was about 14 when this came out. So it's a camp movie it's coming of age film, comedy, very, very corny, cheesy comedy, campy. But I remember sitting in the theater and watching it and enjoying it because I was the target audience, I think, for it. So, but Christopher Lloyd and Tom Wilson from the Back to the Future trilogy, those are the two that stick out to me. And I'm like, they were the draw for the movie, I would say, for the audience, you know, on a large scale, but especially for me because I love the Back to the Future trilogy. In fact, Back to the Future is like one of my favorite movies of all time. So that was definitely what I remember.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something we'll definitely be touching on more because Christopher Lloyd is the center point of this film. And like you brought out, there's some cameos. So we'll definitely be bringing that out. I honestly don't have too much of a memory of this. I can say I probably saw bits and pieces of it, but this was kind of, I'll admit, kind of a forgotten movie. And when you brought up, hey, this could be a movie to consider, it was like, oh yeah, it kind of brought back some of those memories, but I'll admit it was kind of a forgotten movie. I didn't really recall seeing all of it all the way through. So we'll get into it more though of thoughts what I think of it today. Before that though, I have to ask you the question then. So being that this was back in 1994, what were your expectations going back into the rewatch today?
Well, that was kind of the beautiful thing about it is I had zero expectations because, as a kid watching it, uh, everything is brand new and shiny, and you don't expect too much as a kid. You just want to be entertained constantly, and I was at the time. I was very, very entertained. As an adult, when you grow, you become more critical of literally everything that you watch. And so, unless it's something that you haven't seen before or you've been told something, it's been really hyped up. I feel like this is a movie looking back where I was just like, well, it's called Camp Nowhere. It's got a goofy cover to it. It's got Christopher Lloyd in it. My expectations are what they are. They're very, very low, if not zero. So, yeah.
Only way down is to go up. So that's actually not too bad of an expectations. I was like, I hope I get surprised with this one. My expectations were, I hope my kids enjoy it. That's always a part of my checklist. I try to watch movies with my kids and hope it's family friendly, those types of things. But I was kind of like you. I was like, I don't really have much expectations because those memories are very bits and pieces. I don't have much. So it was almost going into this almost with a fresh take. So that's our expectations. But before we get into the plot rewind, let's pause just a moment to hear from our sponsors.
Love movies as much as we do? Bring the experience of the big screen to your walls with movieposters.com. Whether you're into classics, blockbusters, or indie gems, they've got something for every film fanatic. As a listener of our podcast, you can get 15% off your order now. Just use code Grandma's House 15 at checkout. Head to movieposters.com and let's build your ultimate collection today.
All right, let's take the VHS out of the cover, let's put it in the VCR, and press play. So Camp Nowhere follows a group of kids who hire a down-on-his-luck actor, played by Christopher Lloyd, to pose as various camp directors and fool their parents into thinking they're attending different specialty camps. Instead, the kids use their camp money to create their own unsupervised summer camp where they can do whatever they want. When the parents decide to visit for Parents' Day, the kids and their hired adult must scramble to maintain their elaborate deception. Eventually, the scheme falls apart, but by then, everyone has learned valuable lessons about responsibility, and the kids prove they were better off at their self-made camp than the ones their parents originally chose. So that's kind of an overview of the plot, but I just start with what are some of your first impressions as you're watching this movie?
So I actually thought that the editing was really well done. I mean, as cheesy as the setup and everything else is in this movie, whoever did the editing did a very good job. They pieced it together very well. I don't know that I loved how thrown into it you were immediately. There was like very little backstory with the parents. And I really dislike some of the casting choices with the child actors, including the lead child in the movie. So I remember, when I was little, I didn't care about stuff like that. But now I'm like, why didn't they get somebody with a little more riz, as the kids say, like it might have been for a reason, but I still think that the kid should have been a little more charming than he was. And so I thought some of the casting choices there were a little, I'm sure these were kids who grew up in Hollywood, and it's from Hollywood Pictures after all. So they were probably kids of adult actors. They were all in the business, that kind of thing. So they didn't really think about the actors too much.
I was sensing that a little bit. I mean, he had like the worst haircut ever. That was kind of the style for the time.
Right.
I'll give him that. But man, that bugged me the whole time. That haircut, it was just like, I just want to take a razor and cut the rest of his hair. He had that horrible like bull mullet combo going on, and
Flippy
his name is
floppy.
Mud. Yeah,
like the Primus song. My name is Mud. Yeah, what a nickname. Yeah, I mean, I think they came up with that because he was somebody that he was supposed to be a geek. He was a target. He was an outsider. So Mud, he's a stick in the mud, and they couldn't call him Stick. Mud sticks better than Stick. So I don't know. But yeah, I thought it was funny. At least it helped me remember that, since I don't remember names very well at all. I remembered that, that's the main character, Mud. Okay, got it.
That's all I remember. I think his name's like Mitchell or something. Like, is that his real name? I can't recall. But
that sounds like
Mud's easy to remember.
Right.
Yeah. That it works. I mean, it's a kid nickname. I mean, I can recall in school being called weird nicknames, and it just sticks. You do something weird, so maybe you fell in the mud one day. That kind of goes back to what you're saying. There isn't much backstory with the parents. There isn't really much backstory with the kids. I mean, you go along with it. You get the hang of it, but there isn't really a, hey, here's these characters, here's their backstory. It's just kind of you're thrown into it and it goes, which I'm okay with. I mean, not every movie has to do that. I mean, it kind of was clunky. I will admit I was starting to lose a little interest, actually, because it moved a little too quickly. I'm one that you don't want to go too slow. That's a fine balance in movie making that I really do respect. Those really good movies, how they can balance it. This one did feel a little clunky at the beginning, so I do agree with you a little bit on just the moving too fast. I think if they slowed it down a little bit, maybe had a little bit of a funnier scene than your typical swirly. I mean, it doesn't. It's okay, but it's just
so the kid, the main bully who you thought was a bully, but turns out it's not a bully. It's his friend who he just happens to do homework for because he's smart and a geek. So that character is played by an actor who is very familiar. You've seen him in a ton of different 90s sitcoms and movies. His name is Andrew Keegan, and he's in all kinds of things and still acts today. That's somebody who I did recognize. I'm like, oh, well, they cast that guy. He's familiar. But yeah, just the archetypes that they picked for the camps at the beginning. So you had, of course, the computer camp. You had music camp, which was the rich girl. You had the military camp with the general, sergeant, general, and then of course you had fat camp. Let's talk about the girl who played the fat camp person. She was not fat. Wow, yes. What was that? So that choice, it's almost like the movie makers got together and went, if we actually choose somebody of a certain size, maybe they would be offended and it would be taken the wrong way. The way I look at it, this is a camp, so it would have the reverse effect. It would make somebody think that if they weren't that size, then they are that size. And I'm like, that's not good. That's not the message you want to send. So of course, again, as a child, I'm not thinking about that kind of thing, but as an adult, I am,
Oh, I certainly did. I was like, that she's not fat, number one. And then, number two, later in the film, her mom surprises when they do the parent day. And she's like, you're so skinny. I'm like, she looks exactly the same. What do you mean?
And I think it was a casting issue because they drew more attention to the food that she was eating. I'm like, well, you can't trick us. We see what we see. Obviously, she's not big. So anyway, I just thought that was wrong.
I do like how you brought that out. There's the different varieties of camps for each parent, and that plays into the quote unquote parent day. We're kind of jumping ahead to it, but the whole concept is they have this fake camp, and Christopher Lloyd is this, down on his luck, whatever you want to call him, was a drama teacher and has this car repo guy chasing after him. So there's always got to be that little plot point of someone coming after you. And in this case, it was a Texas guy that's from Columbus, Ohio, or he bought the loan. That's what it was, wasn't it? The car from Columbus.
Yeah, that story was what? There's so many little details. The way that this is written, there's so many little details where you're like, why is that important to the story? Get on with it, move it along a little bit. What? But no, the actor who played the repo guy, also a very well-known character actor. He's one of those guys where you're like, he's in everything. I don't know his name. What's his name? He's in every movie I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I felt the same way with him. But I think Christopher Lloyd, obviously, he was your top billing guy. So he was your comic relief, kind of your main character outside of Mud. I just refer to him as Mud, the main character kid. That has that idea of having the camp. But what did you think of Christopher Lloyd in this? Because you brought out you love Back to the Future, and I think you got to know Christopher Lloyd. But what did you think about him in this role?
Well, I love Christopher Lloyd. I think I almost love every role that he's ever chosen. because he's a great physical comedian. He can really put everything in. I mean, nothing's going to ever top Doc from Back to the Future. I mean, that was by far his best role. But he was really good as the guy in Dennis the Menace. He was great, and I think he was in the movie called The Dream Team, which is not a family-friendly movie. It was a really good movie. But he's had some other really, really good roles. But this one, I liked what he could do with what he had. He was given a script that was not the greatest, and every chance he got to portray a character, he put his all into it. He did the Christopher Lloyd thing, so that's all I can ask of him, really. So it was enjoyable just to see him be Christopher Lloyd in a movie,
It felt a little like that's where the nostalgia was starting to hit, I think, was when he started to get more of the screen time, going back to when it was kind of starting out, and it felt really clunky, just trying to throw you into the mix, which, again, that's not a bad thing. It's just that was probably the weakest part of the movie for me. But once Christopher Lloyd starts to be reoccurring, and they get to the camp, I don't know what it was. I was hit with this wave of 90s. I mean, I made notes that you have like Diet Cherry Coke sitting out on tables when they're doing the like meeting with Christopher Lloyd for the fake camps. There's a Pringles thing like awkwardly put right in front of the camera so you can see it perfectly. A Circuit City, a van when the kids go crazy and start spending all the money when they're at the camp. I mean, I
want to talk about that scene too, but no, I totally appreciate the product placement. Yeah, there's just something about seeing, you live in real time. You go through all the different product changes, the way the bags are, the way the shapes of the bottles are, but seeing it on screen, there's just something there's that little flashback that just happens where you're like, wow, I remember when this can used to have this color or this shape or this line in it. I remember when the Doritos bag had the Dorito coming out of the bag and you could see into the bag and it wasn't all solid. Like there's these little details that you can pick up on that you can't do with, in your mind. You can't think about it, but if you see it in a movie, you're like, oh my goodness, I remember that when I was a kid, So great.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's what was hitting me with the nostalgia. And then all the super soakers, they just go to town. Like what comes to find out is, they scammed their own parents into paying Christopher Lloyd, go to this camp. And it was, like you said, tailored to each parent. But the kids.
Can we talk about that scene? So Mud has this wallet that somehow fits all of like these hundreds of kids' money in this wallet, this Mary Poppins purse wallet. I don't know how all this money is supposed to pay for these truckloads of all this stuff. But the other part of that, which just is so funny to me, it's because, okay, this is before Amazon. This is before a kid had access to being able to buy truckloads of anything. Where are these trucks coming from? Where are they buying them from? I mean, I know we had catalogs back then and like magazines you could order stuff from, but truckloads? Really? Like, what are we doing here? Come on now. And it almost reminds me of another movie that you and Seth tackled called Blank Check, the scene where, the truckloads, one after another, that really just hit with me. I'm like, oh, that's like Blank Check. So, yeah, it's just so funny to me. There is a particular scene, though, a lot of there's a particular thing about that scene I want to talk about, too. And the music sounds so generic throughout, but there's a lot of montages they piece together. The only song that I remember that actually hearing on the radio is a song I haven't heard since I think the first time I've ever watched this movie, which was a long time ago. And it's by an artist called Paul Carrack. And the name of the song is I Live on the Groove. And immediately when I heard that song with that montage and the trucks pulling up, emptying out all the stuff, I'm like, I love this song. I remember this song. I haven't heard it in 30 years. And I looked it up and who is Paul Carrack? He used to be in bands like Squeeze, Mike and the Mechanics. He played for David Gilmour. All these different bands, but never was a huge name. So that was just interesting to me.
That's really cool. And you hit it on the head. I thought the exact same thing. This was like Blank Check going to camp. It really was, of not $1 million, but again, Christopher Lloyd gets paid $1,000 and he thinks that's a lot of money, which it is, but not like I'm going to spend all this time fake rehearsing and all. I mean, he had different wardrobe and different. You'd think he had to go to a lot of effort. And for $1,000, I would have been like, but he was okay with that. So you think 3,000 must have really. I meant to look up the inflation numbers on that, but I mean,
I think
it does question, like you say. I agree with you on the truckloads.
Like they had canoes and jet skis and like, what are you doing? Like maybe the rich girl who was going to go to music camp like took care of the bulk of that expense, because I don't see it with these other kids.
You know, maybe like that's a great point. You might have just answered that question of maybe they charge differently for each camp, and the rich girl, it was like 15 grand or something, and they didn't care. You know, it's those parents, and I don't know how much fat camp whatever it would be, but anyway, that might answer it. Maybe just each camp, and there was a lot of kids. So what, 30 to 50? Would you say at least?
I was saying hundreds. It's probably just in my mind. I'm like, oh, it was like 100, but no. When they showed up, yeah, you're probably closer to the right number, 30 to 50.
Maybe 50 plus at least. It was, yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's the fun premise of this movie. It's just, what would you do if you went to camp and there's no rules? And, you know, there is supervision, quote unquote, with Christopher Lloyd's character, Dennis, but at the same time, it's kind of that outlandish, but it's still kind of clever. They have like the airplane that flies over at the same time, and that incorporates into the Air Force camp, making it like the computer hacked into the Air Force, and so it flies over. So it has little funny, quirky things to it with the writing.
And the twins, those twins, like,
yeah.
Like, what, were they supposed to be like masterminds or something, and they were gonna like blow something up? Like, what was that about?
I was thinking the same thing too. I mean, they are kind of like called nerds. Some of them are. So I guess those are the hackers of the group, the very smart nerds of the group. But it's just a fun movie. It is definitely campy. It's definitely cheesy at times. We'll get into it more probably when we get into Grandma's rating. It does have a lot of adult themes on it. We can maybe touch on that another time. But before we get to our fun facts, anything else that you wanted to bring out, or any other thing to touch on?
Just Tom Wilson as the police officer. Of course, he played Biff in the Back to the Future trilogy. He's also a very, very well-known stand-up comedian who plays his own music too, and is like a half musician, half comic. Let's see. Oh, the director of this movie. This was his only movie he directed, and because it wasn't a success, I can kind of see why. He just went into like TV movies after this, and just kind of faded into oblivion. So, that's pretty much all I got. I do have a few quotes whenever you wanted to bring up the quotes too.
Yeah, we could touch on. So there's a doctor. We didn't really touch on it too much, but there's a doctor that gives Mud prescription. And Mud goes to take it, and he's like, "How much do I take?" And Dennis says, 4 every hour. And Mud goes, "That's 1 every 4 hours." And Dennis goes, "Oh, it's not the first time that's got me into trouble." Like,
what are you talking about there?
What about you? What are some quotes you like?
Some of the ones I like. So from the very beginning, Mud's character, this is just such an obvious, he had to remember this line, and he does not deliver it well, but the line itself is actually really good. And it is, "My parents won't be happy till I'm the poster child for the Adopt a Dork Foundation." I just thought that line was hilarious because they're, geeks, computer camp stuff. And then the other one was with Dennis, the Christopher Lloyd character, when he said he's trying to get Mud out of his shell and speak up. And he goes, "Do you know what the first law of the theater is, Mud?" And he goes, "Talk loud enough for people to hear." So, just trying to get him to stand up for himself and get out in front of the group and be outgoing, that kind of thing. Because he is trying to play this character that is just an outsider, somebody who just doesn't fit in. But as he steps into the role of, this is his camp, this is his idea, everybody loves him now, of course he's supposed to come out of that shell. But he kind of already did, so that's why that whole scene is just like, but there's other parts, but so it just didn't work well for me. But I do like that quote and the way Christopher Lloyd delivered it.
That's what I was going to say. Christopher Lloyd does you can't fault him for sometimes the writing is a little cheesy, but there's some good quotes in there. So those were a few I think I had written down too. But we'll go through the fun facts. This is normally the time that Seth does. So again, I'm going to try and fill in the best I can for Seth when it comes to that. But the first fun fact I have is this was Jessica Alba's first on-screen debut. Originally, she was hired as an extra for 2 weeks, but later she had to fill in for a principal character. So she technically got actual acknowledgement as on-screen debut. So interesting to think. That's her first movie. You mentioned with Tom Wilson, Christopher Lloyd at first hated the script. He later agreed on one condition that his old co-star, Tom Wilson, who played Biff in Back to the Future with him, would join, then he would agree to playing. So the rest is history. There you go. That kind of goes along with what you're saying about Tom Wilson also from Back to the Future. The original script had a darker and edgier element, but they reworked it to be family friendly. What do you think of that?
I think I can kind of tell how that would be the case. Camps, I mean, we were talking about this before we started the pod, but like camps are one of those things where it's a coming of age time period in a kid's life. You do have to tackle some uncomfortable subject matter or it's not at all realistic. And that goes for a family friendly style movie as well. You don't have to come out and say everything, but you do have to touch on some things or it's just completely unrealistic and you can't take anything seriously, you know? So I can see why they decided to go that route. And I'm glad they did because, I probably wouldn't have watched it if it went the other way. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder, but like you said, there's a little bit of the theming. You can see it might have been left in there, but still interesting when you consider it in the modern scope of things. And last, we like to do it for trivia. So you get to be on the hot seat, not me this time, Ajax. So I like this. I like being
shout out to Seth. Yes.
So here we go. You mentioned the score. The score was done by David Newman. He composed the music. But what other 90s film out of the following did he not compose? So the answer is what he did not compose. Did he not compose A, The Mighty Ducks, B, The Sandlot, C, Jungle to Jungle, or D, Galaxy Quest?
Wow, those are very similar. I would say the only tonal shift there would be that last one, so my guess would be D.
D, Galaxy Quest. That's your final answer.
Well, I can tell by your tone that is incorrect, but yes, that's my final answer.
I'll work on my tone. That is incorrect. He composed that. He actually did Galaxy Quest.
Wow.
The one he did not was C, Jungle to Jungle. That was the only one he did
Another
not.
Tim Allen movie. Okay.
Yeah, he did a lot of, if you look up David Newman, he did a lot. And probably my favorite out of the bunch when I looked up was The Brave Little Toaster. That's 80s.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I was surprised. I was like, oh, he did Brave Little Toaster too. So, well, you and I share a theme. We didn't get the trivia this time. I'm usually one that doesn't get the questions, but that one was, I thought that was a little trickier. If you asked me that, I know I would have botched that one as well. So let's move into our reviews. We like to look around the net, just kind of see what's out there. Ajax, you have a few reviews. What kind of reviews are you seeing there?
Yeah, so you mentioned Rotten Tomatoes, 17% on the tomato meter. It did get a 58% on the popcorn meter, though, so audiences did give it a little love. That's still under the 60% threshold for it to be any kind of fresh. So still rotten, even with the audience. He mentioned that this was a truly interesting situation, which the filmmakers generally leave wilting in the sun. So that is a negative review. I kind of agree with that. I mean, the thing with a camp setting, it can either go one of two ways. It can go where, you're really captivated by it and everything that happens is very interesting and you follow all these little tropes until the end and you're pleased with it, like Ernest Goes to Camp, for instance. Or there's this where the stuff that happens just isn't interesting enough to keep the story moving. So that's kind of where I agree with that. Another one is from somebody named Brent Bingaman, and he says, no kid is going to buy into a movie that revolves around a geek who isn't a geek and a fat girl who isn't fat. And I 100% agree with that. And then finally, we'll give you a positive one. Hal Henson says, it's sweet, likable, and even vaguely hip. So I don't exactly know what he means by vaguely hip, because this was a This was definitely a movie of the era. It is 90s, early 90s all the way, but it definitely speaks to a certain caliber of people. And I mean, I can kind of see the sweet and likable, absolutely. Vaguely hip, we'll see. I don't know.
I'm going to start describing things that way. It's vaguely hip. Just, something's okay.
Yeah.
I like that. That's great.
That was Hal. All right.
Well, that kind of gives us an idea of the reviews out there. Like you said, that's Rotten Tomatoes. But we're going to get down now to our reviews. So, as our special guest, I'm going to start with you first, Ajax, but I have to ask you that question. When it comes to the movie Camp Nowhere, how are you going to rate it? Are you going to take it home? Are you going to leave it at grandma's? Or are you going to hide it in the attic?
All right, so this could easily be a hide in the attic if I didn't have that attachment to it, because it's not a great movie. I mean, it's not. But it's got Christopher Lloyd being Christopher Lloyd. It's super campy, fun, cheesy, corny, no nonsense. I mean, it's a movie you can throw on when you just want to turn off your brain. But I'm not taking it home, so I'm going to leave it at grandma's.
Right. I'll be honest. I was on the fence with this one. I found myself laughing out loud a few times, and with my kids, they found some parts funny. They actually found the swirly part at the beginning very, very funny. That tells you they're in the potty humor stage of their ages and so on. But I was still kind of back and forth. I don't have as much nostalgia as you do. Like you said, that does factor in. I mean, as much as we try to separate that and try to look at a movie, at the end of the day, it's going to be how you feel about a movie. And I'll admit the adult themes were a little much for me. So I'm actually going to, just by a hair, probably hide this one in the attic. I do find it funny. Like, if it took a few of those adult themes out, I actually would probably leave this at grandma's, but I try to think, like, if I watched this in front of my grandma, this would be for an awkward time. There's a lot of just innuendo, a lot of, the whole puberty, like attraction and stuff. There's a lot of that going on. And not that there's anything wrong with that if it's done in the right way. This just did it too much, I felt like. And the last scene of the movie, the whole like big thing of one character is he knows this girl that supposedly skinny dipped, and there's a scene at the end that kind of incorporates that, and I was just kind of like, this is awkward watching with my kids. So that kind of, unfortunately, that's just maybe a me thing that almost tipped the scale. Up to that point, I think it was a leave it at grandma's, but unfortunately, I hate to say it, it was already on the fence. That's what teetered it over for me.
I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, that makes total sense. There's a delicate balance that must be struck when it comes to these kind of movies with these type of subject matters, and this movie just does not strike that balance. And you said, it was going to be a darker movie. Well, if you don't take everything out and you just leave certain things in there that were hints of what it would have been, then you're really making the audience very confused and left like, how am I supposed to feel about this other than just super awkward and don't want to watch it? So I get it. But yeah, the nostalgia is there for me. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you understand that going into it, I think you could have a good time with this movie. I'm not going to trash it because, like I said, it was right there on the fence for me, but I don't see myself really revisiting this one. If I don't see it again, it's kind of a, that was a fun, I had, like I said, a few laughs with it, but other than that, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it to people like my grandma. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And speaking of, we need to hear from grandma to get her rating.
Yeah.
So, Ajax, what is Granny's family-friendly rating for Camp Nowhere?
Grandma's family-friendly rating for Camp Nowhere is a C for adult themes and I would say some not so family-friendly humor, so crude humor as well.
Yeah. Crude humor. You can chalk it up to some language in there too. That was also kind of the 90s. There was a lot of just, your typical curse words in there. But it's, maybe, I guess, just see for yourself. But be forewarned. Grandma, at least my grandma, maybe gasp a few times going into it. So, well, we got another movie in the books. Cannot thank you enough, Ajax, for coming on and filling in for Seth. So we want to give you the spotlight. Where can people find and connect with you?
Oh, I forgot about this part. All right. Well, again, shout out to Seth. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. And you can find me on TikTok at broken_spatulas. If you like They Might Be Giants dramatic readings and dog walking dad jokes. On all the other socials, I'm at Ajax2727. And yeah, I appreciate it. Once again, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for filling in. And again, Seth sends his regards. He's looking forward to getting back. He was bummed that he wasn't able to make it, but appreciates that you're able to fill in. For us at Movies at Grandma's House, you can always find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, of course, YouTube. You can sign up for our newsletter. That is where you can get entered into our monthly contest. You can win a free poster of your choice from movieposters.com. Make sure you go check them out. It's a lot of fun to just kind of look around and browse their selection. They got a ton of posters there. You can see them behind me, and also Ajax has one behind him as well. So be sure you're signed up on our newsletter. That's where you are entered. You're signed up. That's all you got to do. Each month, you're automatically entered in. That's also where you'll be up to date with all things movies at Grandma's House. We got a lot of goodies in there, so don't miss out. Well, that's going to do it for our time at Grandma's House. But don't worry, we will be back soon. So in the meantime, remember to be kind and rewind. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.